Hello, and welcome to an afternoon version of the Two Bees. And there they are, the Two Bees, disturbing my mid-afternoon nap. But I guess we'd better let you know who we are. Right, gentlemen, now so I can just go crawl into the corner and go back to sleep again. Over to you.
Well, Keith, that's very kind of you, but I do intend to engage you in this conversation.
Oh.
But before I do so, because I always like to have something slightly from behind my left ear, as Philip knows full well, I have, since the start of lockdown, produced a 20-question quiz for a Zoom meeting that my extended family have every Sunday evening. So I have literally hundreds of questions, but I'm going to ask you two of them now. I always have 10 questions on a given subject. I'm not going to trouble you with those. And then I have 10 questions on the news. So the first one I have for you that you might get is, which well-known celebrity at the age of 83 is said to be coming back to perform on Strictly Come Dancing after famously dancing 40 odd years ago in a way that some people found shocking? No. And if I said
chap that went to Australia under a cloud.
No, I'm going to say
no,
more.
It's the oh my goodness, the lady, then TV newsreader.
Yep.
Who
Angela Rippon.
I remember revealed the most amazing pair of legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she was. No, I'm afraid to say that Keith's got the point there because he got the name. It is Angela Rippon. Yeah.
Correct.
What a team we make, Philip.
You look back on it now and you think,
tame.
Yeah, tame. But at the time, it was just sort of shocking, wasn't it? No. That a newsreader might show their legs. Yeah. And the other question I have for you, which I always like to have a question every week that just makes me laugh and laugh and laugh. So I look these things up. So I'm going to ask you about the Hangzhou Zoo in China, Eastern China, and what announcement they've had to make about their Malaysian sun bears. A sun bear being a relatively small bear, but there were rumors being put around on the internet about them. I do like this. I do like this one. You won't, I'm not suggesting you'll get it, but you'll like it. Any takers?
No.
Richard, I know because you try these damn questions on me all the time.
Yeah.
That most of them, to anybody with a normal life, and with a normal interest in things, will never get the answers.
Yeah.
No doubt these sun bears were being hired out for sexual purposes. I've no idea.
No, it was the rumor that was being put around was that they were, in fact, they were humans dressed up as bears.
People, they were your height.
Yeah, people believed it. People, in China believed that this zoo was fooling them by getting effectively Ewoks to appear and come out and walk around, as opposed to real bears. And this zoo has had to say, no, promise you, they are real bears. And there's another zoo in China that apparently had to prove to members of the public that their zebras weren't donkeys that had been painted. You know, how good is that? How good is that?
Well, it's very good. Many years ago, my wife bought a dog, a puppy.
Yeah.
Ostensibly a full pedigree border terrier. We paid in those days really a large amount of money for this puppy, for a bunch of ne'er-do-wells nearby.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I swear to God, the black ring round its tail had been painted on.
Yes.
The bordering on a border terrier, as he became known locally, was only a bit border.
Yeah.
But bless him, he was a tough old soul, and because he was in such a bad way, in the end we had to euthanize him when he was 21. So he had a long life.
That is a good age. Yeah. I did. Yeah. Mm.
A ridiculous escape artist. He got me into trouble with so many neighbours.
Oh yeah. They do.
And funnily, one of the neighbours who are still down the road from us, they used to keep rabbits and guinea pigs.
Oh jeez.
And Barney would escape into their garden and absolutely terrorise these poor animals. Thankfully, they were in their cages. And then one day there came through the door this spoof county court claim for pain and suffering and psychological damage to guinea pigs and rabbits because of Barney's behaviour, supported by a spoof psychological report on the guinea pigs and the rabbits. Yeah. It was a really funny way of saying, keep your dog away from my effing animals.
Yes. I remember, I may have told you this, Phil. I think I probably have, but when my parents sadly were on their way out in 2015, both of them, my sister looked after their dog for a while and then couldn't cope with it. And my parents got him on the basis that he was a Chihuahua. He wasn't. Not one of his legs was the same length as any other leg. You know, he was a wobbly table of a dog. And he was twice the size of a Chihuahua. And he hated me. Really, really hated. I'd go to my parents' little council house. I'd go into the kitchen, make a cup of tea. And he'd deliberately sit behind, just at the kitchen door, and go at me.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, and my sister couldn't cope with him, and so I said, "Look, I was over in Chichester, and I went up to Berkshire, where my parents then lived, and." I was suited and booted because I was at work, and at Reading Station, which is now a lovely, as you may know, a beautiful station that's been renovated. And I was there with this sort of zombie dog, who could hardly walk. It was hippity hoppity hippity, and people were looking at me as if to say, "What the hell have you got there, mate? What is that?" And I was feeling the same, but I did bring him home, and we looked after him for the rest of his natural, and some of his unnatural, I reckon, in his case, because as I say, I think he was a zombie dog. But dogs.
So, in canine terms, he may have been the Walking Dead.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah. You know, I remember my mother laughing at me so much because she said, "We've got this Chihuahua," and then he just grewed and grewed and grewed, as they say. And she says, I don't really know what was the problem with that dog. And I said, it's the whippet in him. And she did laugh a lot at that because he did have the sort of back end of a whippet and the front end of a Chihuahua, which isn't it's not a great look, is it? It's a bit like you, Phil. You know, we've never seen your body.
Well, you wouldn't want to.
No, it's all for the best, all for the best.
My wife would advise you against it.
And, well, unless you're going on one of these pay-per-view sites, which you do still now. Yeah, I'd agree with you.
I haven't money to pay for anything.
No. You're
talking about not a good look.
Yep.
Tell Keith about when your dad had his hair dyed.
Oh yeah, dear old dad. My father was a sort of practical joker in many ways, some of which I couldn't tell you on air, Keith. But he'd come home from having driven his lorry and he'd say to me, "I think we should do this. I think we should do that." And he thought he was about, I guess, my age. And I think it was my niece's. I've got twin nieces. I think it was their birthday party. And he decided that he'd dye his hair for it. Nice brown color. Dyed his hair brown. And he thought he could just then wash it out. And he couldn't. Because it stains your hair. And he ended up looking like Quentin Crisp, which for an HGV driver isn't a good look, if I may say. And he just had this pink hair. Well, that's what he told me. I don't know. He never went further than that. Who am I to judge?
So your biological father clearly had a very good sense of humor.
Extraordinarily good sense of humor.
So what happened to you?
I think he laughed my mother into bed, and then I was conceived, and I just became very studious and didn't have a sense of humor at all. Obviously.
I mean, I couldn't help but...
Mom, this is no joke.
Yes, well, I can relate to Keith's earlier comment. You, Richard, as ever, rather cannily ignored it, but he's obviously half asleep because we've woken him up.
Oh, yeah.
From his siesta.
Yes. Oh, completely. It's definitely a siesta.
I understand that because you woke me up from mine.
Well, do you know what, Philip? And I think you will confirm.
What sort of time is 3 o'clock?
Well, I mean, Phil, cut it down, lad. You will confirm this, that we have not spoken about our topic that we're going to talk about this afternoon.
You told me there was no topic.
Well, I do have a topic.
Yes, that surprises me not. God help us.
But you are light upon it, as you ever do, Philip, in a sort of light-footed way, like Oberon from A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh yes, I'm dainty-footed. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can puck off anytime you want to, obviously.
So I'm told.
Yeah, but what I wanted to talk to you two about, if I may, and I hope it's not a sensitive subject, is how people best approach retirement, and in particular, men of a certain age. because I'm aware of men who do it very badly, who the rage against the dying of the light. Quote from Phil. Quote from.
Pass. Yates.
No, Keith.
He's asleep. Leave him alone.
Okay, it's Dylan Thomas.
I just don't know.
No, it's Dylan Thomas.
Ah.
Seriously, it's an education here. And in fact, oddly enough, look.
That's your fantasy.
I've just eaten a jar of cockles, which, as you know, I quite like.
Oh my God!
No, I do like them. And
yes, well, I know that. That's not my point.
They come from Lochern, which is on the Taff estuary in Wales. And the town of Lochern, I'm using my Scottish pronunciation there, I may be wrong with the Welsh, is the town upon which Dylan Thomas based. Go on, tell me.
Well, he wrote a poem about the worst place on earth or something, didn't he?
Yeah. And what was it called?
Oh, I've forgotten.
Seriously. Keith? No,
I'm still asleep.
Literary man, no. Okay, I'll tell you at the end. But
Keith just used the phrase, I'm full of sleep. There is a poem or a play with that line in it. What's the play or poem? Shakespeare.
It's not Hamlet, is it?
No, it's not Hamlet. I've no idea what it is, but it's certainly somewhere.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Under Milkwood.
Yes.
Dylan Thomas.
Yes.
And rather than calling the town, as this says on the jar of cockles, Lochern, do you know what he called it?
You have told me this before and I've forgotten. Go ahead.
I'm just going to write it down, okay? He called it
You've woken me up for this.
Yeah, he called it Llagrebo, double L.
Which means?
Aregub.
Which, if you say it backwards, says the obvious.
Says bugger all. Yeah. And he did that deliberately. All credit to the man, despite being Welsh. No, but I wanted to talk to you chaps about retiring because it's something that we all have to deal with. And Keith, I was just wondering about your experience. I know you're not completely retired. You keep going, but you at some stage walked away from a job with an income, and I'm just wondering, how did that feel? Did you feel that affected you as a person?
No, I mean, I don't accept the word retirement, and I haven't had a proper job since 1973. I've always been on some sort of contract, or I've held the job because I was good at it, and they wanted me there, and happy to sign a contract. So I really don't understand the normal work practices. So I can't answer your question. All I can say is that I look at people who are even semi-retired, with all due respect, Philip, because you are now a very active broadcaster. But you look at them and they don't know what the hell to do with themselves, and that fills me with terror. I can't possibly imagine being in that state. So I just don't accept that there is such a thing as retirement.
Some people hanker after it, though, don't they, Keith? Some people say, right, at the age of 65, 67, whatever it might be, I will have made enough money and then I will go and just
do what?
Yeah. And
the grass is always greener, isn't it? I can't wait to have the time to do this, and within 5 minutes of doing it, Jesus, this is boring.
Yeah. So how long is it since, Keith, if you don't mind me asking, since you last had a sort of contracted job?
Probably 2018, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But my last job that you could identify as a staff job was in 2002, I guess. I left Reuters on New Year's Eve, 1999, and went to work for CNBC for 2 years prior to taking on a contract to go to Kosovo. I had done a bit of work in the Balkans for Reuters, so people were aware that I knew I actually primarily Romania, which is in those days, and I don't know whether it's improved, it's a nasty bloody place. But I then worked for USAID on a contract for 2 years. But all my contracts have always allowed me to do something else. In other words, none of them have ever been exclusive. And that's why when I was in Northern Ireland, I worked first of all for the BBC and ITV, but I also worked for British Airways, which was great because I was able to say to the London office, I fancy going to New York this weekend. Can you put me on Concorde?
Yeah. He was the worst cabin crew that they've ever had, apparently. But there we go.
Who cared? The free champagne bottle stacking up.
Oh yes, I can well imagine, Keith. You're like in the Australian cricket team on tour. You personally, yeah. Philip, what's your? And if you don't mind discussing it, you've stepped away, and that's the way I like to think about it for you at the moment. You've stepped away from being a full-time barrister. Never say never. What's your experience been of moving away from doing, a job?
Well, Richard, for reasons I still fail to understand, you've always, and I suppose you've had your reasons as my then head of chambers, to put something of a spin on the fact that I've retired. You use these euphemistic phrases like stepping away, taking a step back. I'm rather more black and white about it. I have retired. I am no longer on self-assessment as a self-employed person.
You've dealt with all
registered for VAT and so on. So I have made the break. You know as easily my closest friend in the workplace that I had not liked the job for many years. Unlike you, I had lost, as people call it, my mojo. I found it increasingly stressful. And I found even getting to court a labour, even before my left knee finally gave in, for which I'm now, as you both know, awaiting a replacement. So that was the catalyst for my eventual retirement.
When are Amazon going to deliver that, Phil?
Well, they've lost it.
Oh,
I keep getting emails saying you can apply for a refund if you wish.
And then it will turn up, it will be the wrong knee, won't it? It will be the other side.
It'll be the wrong trousers.
Yeah, there's no question. Yeah, down the wrong trouser leg, no question.
You remind me of another very, very close lifelong friend of mine who will ask me a serious question. And if I go anywhere near a serious answer, he then just reduces it to a piss take.
Yeah.
Now, what do you want me to say, Richard? Do you want me to be serious, or do you want me to continue to mock you as you deserve?
No. But I do think there's an interesting issue there about, and it may well be it's more general. I don't know, but in particular for older men, and I've seen a lot of them in our profession, Philip.
Yeah, don't go into that. You asked me not to mention that.
Yeah, but
these older men you visit. Now stop it. Just move on.
Yeah, it's fine. They take their teeth out. It's not a problem. But so
well,
many.
You insist on that, don't you?
Yeah, of course I do. But so many men in particular. May well be women as well, but barristers identify themselves with their profession.
Yes.
And that can be a dangerous thing because you end up not being willing to let go, and I want to at some point retire. I don't want to keel over in court 2 in Lewis with my wig falling off. I'd like to have a few years after that. And it's just interesting to hear how, Keith has sort of pounded on. He's the ultra marathon man, as far as I can see, when it comes to retirement. And that suits him, and that's great. Whereas it's just an interesting contrast where you, Phil, have made what I think is quite a brave decision, and you've dealt with it well, if I may say, just to step away and carry on with the balance of your life.
Well, you pay me an unnecessary compliment. Keith, to his credit and for my admiration, has created Mirador.
Yep.
The fact that he can't get rid of indiscreet videos really cheeses me off, but that's a matter for him.
and for you, Philip.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
It may be I can find something even like this helps me. You ringing up, joking apart. How do you fancy 3 o'clock? Yeah, I'm free. Are you being served? I'm free.
I was going to say that's the worst John Inman impression I've ever heard, if I may say.
Yeah, that's because I'm straight, you see.
Phil. Yeah.
In all seriousness, let me give you a working example. Now, this morning, yesterday, I discovered that you are a bit under the weather at the moment.
I'm fine now. Yeah. Thank you.
This morning you ring me. I know here it's absolutely slashing it down, and it still is. Yes. And I'm sure with you in Lewis it was too.
Yes.
You were off to Portsmouth Crown Court.
Thank you.
Doing not one of your cases, but for the sake of Chambers,
revealing the locations that I go to. It's not really something that I want to be revealed, but there we go. Yeah.
All right, you were going somewhere in Hampshire. doing a case that wasn't yours, looking after Chambers' interest, not feeling 100%. The trains to Haywards Heath and London were unavailable, so everybody was piling on to the trains to Brighton, i.e. your train. So you go to Portsmouth, no doubt a totally miserable journey. And I'll be frank with you, I thought selfishly, thank God that's not me, because these days I just wouldn't cope with it.
No, I can understand.
And that's before you even get to court. And then you get to court and you've got the challenge of an increasingly unsympathetic system. And, well, I found it stressful. You probably don't, but just presenting a case, doing a case. So I just thought, I'm glad I'm not having to do that. And that's my take on my so-called retirement, that it's what I'm not having to do that keeps me going.
But I'm sort of a bit with Keith on this, if I may say, that, and I can see both of you, the reason I raised it, because I thought that you'd have differing, you've taken differing paths, the pair of you, and you're both a wee bit older than me. But I think I'm probably going to be a bit more Keith than I am going to be you, Phil, in terms of...
Oh, you will be. No. I do nothing very well.
Whereas Keith just works all the bloody time. Look, it's...
Well, that's his psychology. That's what he is. And that is probably why he still is in fine fettle at his age.
Well, for a 27-year-old, he's looking pretty good, I've got to say. And I look forward to his memoirs coming out.
Richard, the big question is, will he invite us to his 30th?
Well, I don't think he will, because once his book, My Nights with Jordan, comes out, I think then he'll just be on the celebrity circuit, and there's not a lot we can do about that.
Well, I'm told that until he met Jordan, he had perfect eyesight.
Possibly. He might have had perfect many things by that time. I could tell you a terrible story there, but not on air.
Just before we move on, with Phil saying that he handles doing nothing extremely well. When I was in Kosovo, we would see the EU, people working for the EU coming, who really were the biggest bunch of losers. Dreadful.
Don't hold back, mate.
We had we had this song which we took from I think it was Arthur Askey or Bing Crosby sang it, but it goes something like, "We're busy doing nothing, working the whole day through,
trying to find lots of things not to do." Yep.
We're busy going nowhere. Isn't it just a crime? We'd like to be unhappy, but we
never have the time. Yeah.
And then we would run like hell.
You remind me of the story of a friend.
That was Danny Kaye.
Danny Kaye, that's right.
Sorry, Philip, we lost you there.
Well done, Phil.
Danny Kaye sang that song.
Ooh, maybe. Yeah.
Arthur Askey didn't.
No, he was. I was thinking of the one about it being a bumblebee for Arthur Askey. I think he sang that. Yeah.
He definitely.
Hello, playmates.
Busy bee, how would you like to be like me?
Yes, he definitely did that. No, you remind me, Keith, of a story of talking about sort of that work abroad. I had a friend who went over as part of the relief team after that awful tsunami, the Boxing Day tsunami. And he came back about a month later, and I said, "How was it?" He said, and it was just devastating. The whole east coast of Sri Lanka, for the first half mile inland, had been utterly destroyed. And I said, "Oh God, that must be terrible, mate. Must be terrible." And he said, "On the positive side, it's where Marks and Spencers get all their clothes made. Look at these trousers." Yeah, well,
Well, on that point, that amazing story of the school teacher, the geography teacher, who at the time of the tsunami was one of the teachers looking after a group of sixth form students who were on a field trip, effectively, to Sri Lanka. And at the time the tsunami hit, were in Gal or Gaul, whatever they call it.
Gaul, yeah.
Where the cricket ground is.
Yep.
And above the cricket ground is what we would call it a castle. But it's the highest point at that point. And that geography teacher spotted that completely at the wrong time of day, the sea was ebbing.
Out. Yeah.
It was out. And he thought tsunami. And he took those kids up to the top of the castle, as I've called it, the highest available point, and effectively saved their lives, because 20 minutes later, the tsunami hit. And the whole of the cricket ground and above that level was completely inundated.
Yes,
but all of those kids' lives were saved.
Well, I'm not sure there's much to be said for geography as a subject, but yeah.
I used to love it.
Yeah. Keith, what's your view on geography as a subject?
I am always fascinated by it. But strangely enough, once again, I get embarrassed and twitchy if I'm ever in a country where I can thought to be a tourist. I have to be working and to do all sorts of things that other people wouldn't do. Looking at the old cathedral and so on, because I'm there, is fine. But I don't like going to places to do the touristy thing. So geography I love, but not for the reasons that most people would.
No.
Well, I'd like to raise 2 points there. Firstly, you may have caught the sulky look on Barton's face when he realised he was outnumbered 2-1 on the geography subject. And secondly, I couldn't agree with you more, Keith. I hate being a tourist.
Yeah.
Hate it.
Yeah.
My best times abroad was when I was working abroad. For example, working on the vineyards in France in the late 70s, early 80s.
Picked a lot of the grapes.
Part of it.
Drank a lot of the grapes. That's Philip. Yeah.
Well, Richard, I thought you were going to come in there with some of your deeply interesting anecdotes from Dunbar.
No, what I will tell you, though, is that there was a chap that I taught who is now a silk. And he was from Oriel. And
right, so there we are. Hang on. The man who hates names, you taught somebody who became a KC.
Yeah.
He was from Oriel College, Oxford.
Yes.
Yeah, carry on. Come on, let's have more of it, Mr. Working Class Man.
I've got plenty of stories about that, Phil, I can tell you. I wasn't at Oriel. I just taught.
I know you were. You were at St. Peter's.
I was at St. Peter's, but I taught out of the Queen's College.
There's another mention.
Yeah. And I taught, I think it was trusts law that I taught to the people from Oriel. And the year after this chap had gone through and done his stuff, I was teaching the next year. And one of the women said, you know, because Oriel was the last to take on female students, it was the last bastion of male dominance. And she came in, she said, did you teach? And I said, yeah, I did teach him. She said, you ought to know, in the women's lavatories in Oriel, there's a bit of graffiti that's gone up, which is that even geography is harder than him.
Now, just pause.
Yeah.
Because something I mentioned anonymously.
Yes.
To Mr. Hayes when he and I chatted about George Alagaya and Trevor Francis.
Yeah.
I want you, Richard, to tell Keith and the man and his dog about the time, because I said this summed you up and in a complimentary way, given your background. You were once interviewed by probably then, if not now, one of the top sets.
Yes.
Not just in London, but in the country.
Yes.
And you were offered a tenancy, in other words, a permanent position in those chambers, potentially for a lifetime.
Yes.
You turned that offer down.
Yes.
And I would like you to tell Keith, if nobody else, and he will remember I raised this with him. Not that I raise much these days, but could you tell us why you turned that down?
Well, yeah, what happened is there was back in the day.
Get on with it.
All right, cheers, mate. The results were published in the Times. So results from Oxford, there was a list of who's got a first from whichever college, who's got a 2-1, who's got a 2-2. Anybody who got a first from this set got a letter of invitation to come and talk to them with a view to, and I thought, what's not to like? And I went along, and it was, at the time, it was the Lord Chancellor, oddly enough, friend of Tony Blair's, notorious for his wallpaper. And he chaired the meeting. And he was very keen. I didn't really realize where he was coming from. He was trying to say, well, Oxford must be awfully difficult for you. What with you being a sort of, squalid Oliver Twist type character from the working class, which is the line that he saved this boy from. And I hated it, absolutely loathed it, and turned them down.
Well, he made reference, didn't he? So you've told me, how did you cope at Oxford being the son of a lorry driver?
Absolutely that. And I found that very insulting to my father.
Yes. And my dad being once one of those, I would have done as well.
Yeah. And I don't think either of our fathers were typical lorry drivers in the sense of being mass murderers or like that. But
well, my dad did have a number of number plates in his car boot.
Yeah, but I just I thought, if this is the way it's going to be, I don't want to be in this set of chambers.
Well, I cited that to Keith as an example of your integrity. I hope he agrees.
Absolutely.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's integrity or not, but
yes, it does.
Well, no. It matters more that I'm content with what I've done, and I am. And if I may bring it back around, if in the next 3 years I choose, and I think I may choose within the next 3 years, to step away from work, I will be perfectly content with what I've done. There are quite a few people. There are quite a few people.
Frankly, so you should.
There are quite a few people just up there. I look out of my window who would rather that I hadn't been doing my job, because they're all friends with whom I've had a chat and have ended up doing time.
Yes, but there are many with whom you've supported, or with whom for whom you've supported, who aren't in there because of your skills. So it's a two-way street, isn't it?
Completely, it's completely what we do. Yeah. There's no question about that, Philip. You know that.
And as I understand it, once you do, I'm not so sure it's going to be in 3 years, knowing you, but when inevitably you may have to, you intend to retire to Scotland, I think, don't you?
That's probably my intention, because the great advantage of that, Keith, as I'm sure you will appreciate, is that if the clerks come calling, I can say, sorry, different jurisdiction, mate. Can't talk to you from there. Look, they're after me. No, they're not. It's all right. And one thing I'd quite like to do, in September, I will be in Scotland, and I'd like to do one of these where we talk, and I can talk from Scotland about the nuances, the differences between the legal system. You know, I'm no great detail, but how it's it's an interesting difference that we still have with them up there.
Yeah.
About a whole
now, I should warn you that you know, by going to Scotland or anywhere else for that matter, from where you are now, you may be able to escape the legal system, but you will never escape Mirador television.
Yeah, so
you know, I was hoping you'd say that, Keith. I really was. The thought of Barton and his tenement up in Scotland, hoping to avoid Mirador, no chance.
I've lost you completely, and that's probably all for the very, very best.
Listen, we've been going for 48 minutes. We might as well make it 60, just to round it out as a programme.
Really? Yes.
I was hoping you'd say 58.
You're going to get Philip to. You're going to ask Philip to sing again. Please don't ask Philip to sing again. Let's have a one man.
You've frozen.
Pulls off your ears, lad. I understand what he's doing, though. There, I can understand that. That's
somebody's Wi-Fi is freezing up. I don't think for once it's mine.
And I don't think it's mine.
No. Well, we can all sit and blame each other, can't we? How about that?
No, it's like we realise that you're practicing for when you get to Scotland.
We're not blaming each other. We're blaming you.
Thank you. All right. Cheers, Phil. Yeah. Do you know what? Have your cockles, mate. That's what I say.
So, as a matter of basic interest, how did you eat those? Did you just spoon them into your mouth?
Yeah.
What?
Have you never eaten cockles?
seafood has a very bad effect on me. Seafood, and I eat it.
Yeah. When I was 10, I was 10. I broke my right dominant arm quite badly.
Oh, good heavens.
On the elbow. And I remember it well because it was the weekend of the Queen's Silver Jubilee, which we all remember.
1977.
Absolutely. And it wasn't set properly because they had just, whichever staff weren't on the lash. And so I spent about 18 months having to go to Reading with my mother on the bus just to get it working. And my treat when we went there was that my mother would buy me a quarter pint of cockles from the fishmongers, no longer there in Reading, down a little alleyway in Reading. And so, in fact, eating cockles is a very evocative memory for me.
Now, I am a bit upmarket from that because one of the I believe that whenever I think of food in America, I think in terms of the original surf and turf, filet mignon, and a lobster tail, Atlantic lobster tail, and with a small green salad and a baked potato. Now that to me is the true American meal, and I just love it. I think it's terrific. The trouble is that the name has been stolen to cover all sorts of things, so you don't know what you're going to get nowadays if you ask for surf and turf. No, but that's the classic meal to me.
Now, Keith, I have gleaned from things you've said you're a fan of oysters.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that living in hope?
Is that living?
Given their notorious qualities, is that living in hope even at your age?
Actually, I lived about half a mile from an oyster farm in Northern Ireland on the Ards Peninsula. And the character who was the chief photographer for the Daily Mirror regularly would say to me, Keith, come on, let's go and do a story on Jasper Parsons and the Kew and oysters. And we would go there, and he always asked the same question. He would say, Jasper, is it true what they say about oysters and its power? And Jasper would say, no truth at all, Cyril, not at all. And Cyril would say, how many children have you got, Jasper? And he'd say 17.
Yeah. It's like the bloke who went back to the fishmongers and said, I bought a dozen oysters last night and I had them and then was with my wife. And they said, what's the problem? He said, only 6 of them worked. Yes. I think it's an interesting topic, though, Keith, if I may say, for those of us like you who get up early in the morning. And
it's an interesting topic.
The farming program and that. We produce some of the very best little seafood things that just get shipped off to Spain and to France and to Italy and wherever, and people won't eat it. You go into most, well, if you go into a supermarket, there'll be a bland piece of salmon, there'll be a bland piece of white fish, and there'll be some anemic-looking prawns. The one for what it's worth, and we're not the BBC, so I can advertise. The one supermarket who are different is Morrison's. And if I'm in Brighton, I will always take a wander up there, or if I'm somewhere else where there's a Morrison's. Because they, you just get a bag of fresh mussels, for example. Or last week, I had an octopus from there. Just wonderful food.
Yeah, that's been your fantasy for years, though, hasn't it?
What, have an octopus?
Have an octopus.
I want to be hugged all around. Exactly.
Yes. Well,
the Scots Gaelic for octopus is Ochchasan, which means 8 legs. So
fascinating. Basic and fascinating.
And Ochchasan. And so you have to repeat it then to say. In other words, you say the 8 legs has 8 legs. What a stupid language. But...
Well, the Scots need to repeat things to be understood.
Aye, you're right there, Phil. Aye, I couldn't.
Now, on the subject of exports to the continent of perfectly good, but in a sense rejected seafood. I mean, for more than a decade, I and the family would holiday in North Cornwall, in particular Padstow, now called Padstein for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But we would go down to the docks, the port, and there was always, I can guarantee you, twice a day minimum, there was a continental freezer lorry.
Yeah.
Spanish, Italian, whatever. And at first I was a bit baffled. And I talked to the people there, and they said, no, that's all our frozen seafood going to Spain, Italy, whatever.
Yeah. And the same is
because
true.
Nobody wants it here.
And the same is true of Newlyn and all the ports in Cornwall, and the ports up the east and west coast of Scotland. Tragically. Eat more fish. It's good for the brain. And then you will be able to get my quiz questions right.
Something that my wife still waxes lyrical about, one of the few things, and I'm excluded from that now.
Of course.
Are Scottish langoustines.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Wonderful.
Because she visited the Western Isles, whatever, Scotland, with family and friends long before I ruined her life, as she puts it. And langoustines. This big.
Yes. Yes, the full-size langoustine is very good. Now, I should alert you two gentlemen that I had planned in the autumn schedule, as it were, to go to Dieppe. And the reason I thought of Dieppe is because we're talking about seafood, and of course you can get lobster with almost everything in Dieppe. But they have a festival at the end of November. And it's I always at the last minute forget the name of these things, but they are the posh little seafood fish, not prawns. Anyway, it'll come back to me in a moment. But it is the biggest festival of its kind in Normandy. And I thought this would be very suitable for us to take a team over and spend 2 or 3 days reporting on this festival. And I've got you to pencil in to actually be part of that team to go to Dieppe and wallow in these seafood fish.
That sounds like a lovely idea, Keith, I have to say.
Well, I would love that. My problem is I don't have a passport.
Well, we smuggle you in as a Frenchman.
Yeah, and no one else looks like you, Philip, so don't worry about that.
The fish that I used to love in Dieppe was they did Ray O'Burr, the local Ray.
Sorry, I just thought he was a 1950s singer, Ray O'Burr.
Right now, gentlemen, we've gone exactly an hour.
Lovely
and fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
Please release me. Let me go.
Exactly.
So thank you very much for taking the time.
Not at all. Lovely to see you, Keith.
I was a bit disappointed you weren't there this morning, but I do understand that. Actually, one of the things when I'm doing a schedule of programs is I always put in the flexibility of the two Bs will actually have to be fitted in at odd times. So I was a bit worried when you said that you didn't want to do things at midnight, because it might just have to happen that way from time to time, just to get you on.
That's a completely separate issue, Keith. That's nothing to do with, but we're not broadcasting that.
Oh, very well.
As Tommy Cooper said, I said to my PE teacher, "Can you teach me to do the splits?" He said, "How flexible are you?" I said, "I can't do Tuesdays." Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Keith. Lovely to see you.
Okay, there we go. As the two Bs who were busy in court this morning, but gave up their time to join me this afternoon, and will indeed be there. Well, how many times this week I have no idea, but certainly, hopefully, we'll capture them on Friday as well. All right, until tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, 8:30, Keith Hayes with Mirador Television from a variety of places at the moment, but tomorrow back at the White Hart. So for the moment, toodle pip.